delighted, as always, to join with Loudoun County Public Library in their amazing programming and offering. I'm really, really grateful for them, and I'm grateful for you. Tonight, I'm really looking forward. This is like one of my favorite practices. So the title for this practice, like that, the way that the library published it was just, it's practicing compassion. And there's lots and lots of different ways that we can practice compassion. For those of you who are not familiar with it, there's actually a growing body of evidence-based research around compassion as a quality that we can actually cultivate. It's something that we all have this innate capacity for compassion, for noticing difficult situations, for seeing suffering, for like feeling our own or someone else's pain or struggle, but then choosing or being able to respond with kindness and care, right? Like turning towards that with a sense of connection. And from that, when those two parts of our like physiology, our ability to be aware and be like, oh, there's something wrong here, or there's something hard here. It doesn't have to be like super big, but we feel like, oh, hold on a second, something catches my attention. That when we have that, and when we then also hold what we're noticing with a sense of connection, care, like rooted in our deepest values of who we are, who we want to be in the world, those two things combine in us and create this physiology of compassion, which is distinct from just empathy. We might feel empathy, which is when we feel with someone and we go, oh, that hurts, but then we get into distress or we shut down or we get angry, right? Those are all natural responses also. And sometimes they're skillful, sometimes they're not. But what research is finding, which also underscores pretty much all wisdom traditions, all spiritual traditions, the arts, what it's finding is that we have this capacity as human beings to not just notice suffering, to not just feel pain, our own or someone else's, but to care about it and to want to do something about it. And when that comes online, it shifts the way that our body experiences the suffering. It actually creates this sense of courage, a sense of connectedness. And even if we can't, quote unquote, fix what's wrong, we end up feeling part of something bigger, like part of the bigness of life, right? Like we don't feel isolated in our suffering or distanced from someone else in their suffering. It actually makes us realize, oh, we're human, and this is part of the human experience, which then even if we can't fix what's wrong, it changes the way we experience it, right? It changes our ability to connect with each other and to find strength in and for each other. So that's what compassion is. And there's lots of practices that we can do, some that we automatically have been probably doing ever since we can remember. But there are also some deliberate practices that show that as you do them, it's like going on a run. You know, like running or doing some sort of aerobic exercise is really good for your heart. It helps your heart become stronger as a muscle. It helps, like it has a whole host of benefits. Or doing yoga or some sort of stretching or Pilates where, you're building a different type of strength and building a different type of flexibility. The different physical exercises can strengthen us and make us healthier in clear ways. Likewise, there are different sort of exercises that make us more grateful, that make us more kind, that make us more open to the sense of awe, that help us be more generous, help us be more compassionate. So this idea of practicing compassion has a lot of research behind it now. They've been doing, some pretty cool stuff for the last 20 plus years. But these, as I mentioned, are things that also just might feel intuitive. You might recognize them from other practices, from if you have a religious tradition, they might be from there or from, anyway, they're what we figured out as human beings, but now we understand a little bit more clearly about how they work and why they work, just like we understand why running or why lifting weights or doing yoga is good for our body. The other thing I just want to mention about practicing compassion, that like exercise, 100, 150 years ago, if somebody had said, hey, I'm going to go for a run, just to go running, get some exercise, most people would have been like, why would you do that? Because life for the average human being involved a lot of physical exertion. And so the idea of going and wasting calories or moving just to move, other than maybe dancing or, something that was purely joyful, people would have been surprised by, unless you're an athlete. But now it's a common thing in part because we've really sedentary, most of us have pretty sedentary lives. So if we don't make a deliberate effort to exercise, our bodies suffer. And likewise, in modern society, sometimes the things that make developing qualities such as gratitude or generosity or compassion easy, we don't always have as many of those experiences. Most of us don't take care of, like, anyway, those are things that aren't as normal a part of our lives as maybe they have been as throughout our experience as a species. And so practicing things that develop our compassion is also a great way for us to just take care of ourselves. When we practice compassion for others, it actually strengthens our self-compassion. And when we practice self-compassion, it strengthens our capacity to have compassion for others. So it's like building a muscle and building flexibility. So along those lines, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what we're going to do in our time together. We'll be together for an hour. And as always, like if ever you need to go somewhere or take care of yourself or something's not landing right, of course, like this is a practice of compassion. Pay attention to that and ask yourself, what do I need to do right now? That you have that ability to make that choice. And that is that choice, that willingness to notice and to choose is one of the things that's at the heart of compassion. But what we'll do is we're going to be doing a practice of really connecting to our deepest values. And through that practice of sort of thinking about what matters most to me, we'll then use that as a lens to reflect on this past year, on 2021, and remember things that, just a few different things that have happened, and kind of put those glasses on and use those glasses as a way of bringing compassion to the events of 2021 in our personal lives, and like touching moments of joy, touching moments of sorrow. Each of us have had an unexpected year. It's just true for everybody in the world. And some of us have had to go through some extraordinarily difficult challenges. We may have lost people we love. We may have lost work. We may have been educating children from home and working. I mean, there's a lot. We may have seen relationships that were important to us end. Other people may not have had such like huge things happen, but still it was a disruptive year and it was hard. There was a global pandemic and there's been a lot of division, a lot of strong opinions about how to live and how to do things. And so that stirred up stuff for most of us. So we'll take this idea of really just connecting into our values, that sense of care, like care for ourselves, care for the world, care for the people we love, care for strangers, and just take a chance to reflect on 2021. And I'll give you guys some time to journal. So if you want to have a pen and paper close by, or a laptop, or just even your phone, you're welcome to. You can also just sit and think about them and do them as reflections. You don't need to write. You could also doodle. Sometimes people would prefer to doodle or draw. But we're going to take a moment and just really give ourselves sort of a compassionate lens on 2021. Not to change anything. Compassion's not trying to make things okay. It's really, and this is what I love about compassion, is it's not trying to be like a bypass, like, okay, well, if I'm compassionate enough, I'm never going to suffer. The people I love are never going to suffer. No, it's like actually life is hard. And so we got to have some skills around it. We've got to have some muscles to do the hard stuff and to do the hard stuff with love. And so that's the first sort of like, we'll connect into our values. We'll have an opportunity to do what's called a values affirmation, where we just journal about the things that, as we reflect on 2021. And then we'll turn looking forward to 2022. And once again, think about those values, like what matters to me and how can I connect into those? And how can those help guide me through the holidays and my interactions with people moving into 2022? Like, how can who I want to be in the world, the type of person I want to be in the world, inform the way that I treat myself, the way I treat other people, the way that I respond to the situations in my life? The thing that the research has shown about connecting into our values and then also setting an intention is that we don't always have to like have these things like, written on our hands or tattooed on our wrist. I mean, we can, but we don't need to. Just reflecting on them and sort of setting our, like thinking about what's important to us is like setting the rudder on a ship, right? Like it just starts helping us, even on an unconscious level, start shifting our lives in the direction that we want to be. So it's not like setting resolutions where like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym this often, or I'm going to lose this much weight, or I'm going to eat no sugar. Those are great things if you want to try them. But setting an intention is much deeper, and you might find that it looks different in certain days. Like whatever your intention is, one day it might look one way, another day it might look another way. Because it's responding to the situations of life rather than trying to control life. It's saying, I want to choose how I'm in relationship to life. And I won't always get it right, but just thinking about it and reflecting on it helps us to be closer to living the life and becoming the people that we really want to be. So this idea of connecting to our deepest values and our intentions, like our value, like aspirations, that's when we do that, it's what helps bridge the reality of our lives, of who we are right now, to who we hope to be. Become that overnight, take time, but it begins, as I mentioned, with that rudder to really start putting us in that direction. And when we're like in the reality, this is my life, this is how I am, I'm not perfect, none of us are perfect, but this is who I hope to be. It starts sort of giving us the breadcrumb path, like, okay, I don't need to be that person. I don't need to do that right now. Like be all of those things at once. But right now, what's one thing I can do? It's like this little step-by-step process. It orients us to what matters, and it helps us to make choices, especially when we're in challenging situations. One of the things in terms of values and compassion in particular is that when we see suffering, or difficulty, or we feel pain ourselves, it's easy to go into this place of distress or overwhelm, and that's natural. But when we remember what matters to us, when we remember who we want to be, it's like someone shines a light on the situation, and maybe we can't fix everything, but we can find one small thing that helps us be in closer alignment with that. It helps us. There's a beautiful children's story called The Princess and the Goblin by somebody named George MacDonald. And in one of the stories, it's a long story, I'll just share this image. One of the characters ends up like in a cave in front of a wall, like a stone wall. And she got led there by somebody she trusted. And she was like, why did I end up in front of this stone wall? And so she kind of sits there feeling defeated until she realizes that it's not one solid stone wall. It's a lot of little stones. And she can't move all of the stones, but she can move some of the stones. And so she starts moving the stones that are within her capacity to move, like she's just a little kid because it's a kid story. But as she does that, she starts finding a path through the stone wall. And I think it's a really beautiful image. For us, when we're faced with challenges, we don't need to take on the whole challenge. Like, what's the one thing we can do? And connecting to those values, connecting to our deepest sense of who we are and who we want to be really helps us start identifying, this is one thing that I can do, one small thing. Oh, now I can do this next small thing. And we begin to find our way through something that feels impossible. Some of the research around connecting to our deepest values and articulating them indicate that it, like in this, this is coming out of UCLA, it's coming out of like Stanford, like a lot of different research institutions that have tracked this stuff, but and I think more than anything, like put the research aside, it probably will ring true. I mean, your own personal experience is more important than any research. But some of the research shows that connecting to our values increases compassion. Like that's just a natural byproduct. It's like you practice this and you're going to have more compassion for yourself and other people. It will also increase your sense of gratitude for your life, your trust in life and yourself and others, joy, love, your willingness to ask for help, your willingness to offer help. It lessens our sense of criticism, of judgment of ourselves and of others. It gives us more patience, more perspective, and recognizing that life is a process. None of us are going to get it all right all the time. It also helps us mobilize and tap into our internal resources, right? So like when we're in a difficult place, like as I was describing, it helps us really tap into our deep, deep sense of self, and from that find courage and a willingness to turn outward and to look for choice and opportunities. Connecting to our deepest values also, like there's some really cool research that shows like if we've experienced social exclusion or we're experiencing isolation, a sense of distance from other people, it helps us recover from that, and it helps us feel more connected. It also helps us be less uncomfortable when other people disagree with us, and more willing to change our mind when we get good information. So, and this is partly because our values are often bigger than just our opinions, right? So like we might have an opinion about the way something should be, but our values are deeper. So if we get more information, we might be like, oh, I thought that was one thing, but now I see that actually this is what matters. Like this is how this reflects on me. So we're willing to change our opinion. We're more open to hearing other people's perspectives on things. Sometimes we won't change our opinion. Sometimes we're like, no, I still feel really strongly about this, but we have more respect. We have more capacity to allow other people to recognize that they're working within their deep, like within their own values. We're also less likely to use negative stereotypes or kind of other people when we have differences or when they don't agree with us. It helps us to be more willing to take responsibility for the mistakes we make and to hold other people more responsible, because once again, our values are deeper. They're sort of bigger than we are, or they can help us feel connected to something. So it gives us courage to say, I just made a mistake. That's not who I want to be. Or that person did something wrong and I'm going to go have a conversation with them because this matters to me, like something deep in this matters to me. And then also it leads to us being less likely to just blame or shame ourselves or other people, and to actually have that place of saying what's called a growth mindset, which is, I don't know how to do this very well yet, or that person just doesn't know how to do this very well yet, or we don't know how to do this very well yet, but we're going to learn. Like we're going to learn. So those are just some of the benefits that I find particularly interesting. I hope that that's kind of food for thought. You didn't need to I don't know, some might feel more true to you and others less so, but I think it's also just great to have that information. The last thing I just want to say about it is that reflecting and writing about our values, like actually writing them down, which we'll have an opportunity to do in a few minutes, connects us. Like it brings them more into our conscious mind, and it also connects us more into our hearts and into our courage and our resilience, because it reminds us of what we care about that's bigger than just ourselves, that's bigger than just our egos, our need to be right. Like it connects us to the sense that we belong to all of life, and that we have a responsibility to that, and that we also are taken care of by things that are bigger than us. And so it takes us from feeling small to being like, no, I'm big, I'm part of this bigger experience of life, of which there are many, many parts. It just reminds us that we belong, and that we belong to something bigger than ourselves. So yeah, so we're going to move into, as I mentioned, we'll do two sort of, there'll be two different main parts, little pieces in them. The first will be a chance to just reflect take a moment. We'll just take a few minutes to kind of be quiet and just reflect on, like, what matters to me the most? What do I value? And then I'll share my screen and I'll give you guys 3 different questions that you can journal. I'll give you a couple of minutes on each. You can write down the questions. You can always come back to these if you want. You can also just sit down and sit and think about them. But I'll share my screen so you can see the picture or see the questions. And I'll give you a few minutes with each of the 3 questions just to journal. And then we'll come back, and that will be on last year, or on this past year, the year that we're in 2021. And then we'll sort of just shift and think about, set an intention for 2022. Like, who do I want to be? How could my values help me? And once again, I'll give you guys some time to just think about that and reflect on that. And then I'll, if we have time, share a little bit of a poem, and because art and poetry help us sort of digest information, connect to different parts of our brain and our heart than just thinking does, or talking, like ideas and writing. And then I'll open it up to some questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Lorraine will read them from there. She'll moderate and be a moderator. So yeah, so that's what we'll do. So I invite you to find just a comfortable position. See, we've already been seated for a while. So if you want to move around, take a stretch. Taking a deep breath, kind of shake it out, and then settle back in. You could be seated in a chair. If you want, you can lie down. But once you've found your position, just, take a couple of deep breaths. Perhaps inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. And let your body relax as much as it can. Your eyes can be open or you can close your eyes, whatever feels more authentic to you and helps you focus. And then one more time, just taking in a deep breath as it's comfortable for you. Exhaling, letting the breath clear your mind, settle your body. You just arrive in this moment. Just feel where you are seated or lying down, feeling the earth under you, holding you, supporting you. And your breath that just comes in and out, just taking a moment to settle. I invite you to reflect on the following questions. What is it that I value deeply? Just let the question be there. You can repeat it to yourself. And something might come up quickly. Something might not come up, and that's okay. Just asking the questions is enough. What is it that I value deeply? What matters to me most? And I'll repeat that question one more time. What is it that I value deeply? What matters to me most? And if something kind of quick comes up that feels a little superficial, you can let that be there and then just repeat the question again to yourself. Just noticing any images or thoughts or sensations that might be arising. And then a second question. What in the depths of my heart do I wish for myself, for my loved ones, and for the world? What in the deepest part of me, in the depths of my heart, do I wish for myself, for the people I love, for the world? Once again, just letting the question be there. Noticing any thoughts, sensations, images, feelings that might be arising, and seeing if there are any answers. I'll read the last question one more time. What in the depths of my heart do I wish for myself, for my loved ones, and for the world? You can trust that even if you don't have easy or ready answers to the questions, once you ask them, your brain and your mind, like your unconscious, starts working on them and kind of chewing on them. Even if there aren't answers, you can trust that process. And if and when answers do come up, just acknowledge them and stay with whatever thoughts and feelings they may bring. And I'll give you just maybe 2 minutes right now you can keep thinking about it, or if you have a pen and pencil handy or a laptop or tablet or whatever, to just write down whatever impressions, thoughts, phrases may have come up for you. And if nothing did, that's okay too. You can go get a drink of water or just stand up and stretch. So I'll put myself on mute and I will give you just 2 minutes to reflect. Just take maybe another 10 or 15 seconds to jot down things you might want to come back to. I know 2 minutes isn't a lot of time, but you can always come back to these questions and reflect on them. So I'm going to begin to share my screen. I'm going to now give you a chance to reflect on this past year. And I'll have 3 questions and I'll put them there, and let me see the time. I'll give you about 3 to 4 minutes on each question just to reflect on the year, to think about these questions in the context of 2021 and choose something. And you, once again, you can write about it. You can just think about it. If you're with someone, you guys can have a conversation about it. You can draw a picture about it. But just, you know, this idea of using our values, using the things that matter to us, connecting to them, writing about them, articulating them, using those like as a pair of glasses, as lenses to now think about 2021. It's a big, like thinking of 12 months is a lot. So like that image of stones, just whatever comes to mind, just take that. And then you can once again always come back and think about other experiences. But I'll share these questions with you, and I just invite you to, and I'll kind of walk you through it, to just take a little bit of time to think of an experience and then to journal about it or to write about it. So I'm going to share my screen now. So the first question, let me make sure this is the first, yep, here we go. So this is the first question that I invite you to think about. What personal quality or strength did you discover or find that it supported you this past year? So what personal quality or strength did you discover this past year, or did you know, but like you could really feel supporting you this past year? So thinking about 2021, you can remember a time that you were struggling, or you, like at the beginning of the year, you thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this year? Like doing X, Y, and Z feels impossible. But if you're on this call, you made it. You've made it this far. Congrats. Like, that's amazing. It's been a really hard year. So I invite you to reflect and to journal for the next 3 minutes about a personal quality or strength that you either discovered in yourself or you found supported you in the past year. And I'm going to try to mute myself. Just be quiet. I'm just going to pop in really quickly. You can keep writing if you've already got something, but you don't try as much as you can not to second guess yourself. Just whatever first comes to mind, trust yourself. And if you can't think of anything, you know, if nothing really quickly comes to mind, you can just either stay with the question or just reflect on your body, like your breath, your heart, or, you know, just that your physical body, even if you struggled with illness or injury, your capacity to heal, to recover, to do hard things, like that defines your physical body. So Take another 30 seconds to just finish your reflections or jot down things you may want to come back to. Now I'm going to share a second question for you to reflect on. What activity, role, or relationship brought you meaning, satisfaction, or joy this past year? And once again, just if something comes to mind, trust in yourself, whatever comes to your mind first. And if something doesn't come to your mind, just letting the question be there, sit with it, or find something really simple. And so once again, I will give you 3 minutes to reflect. All right. Take another 15 or 20 seconds. You can, as I said, you can always come back to these questions and write more or reflect on them. And now I'll share the third question with you. What mission, purpose, or community did you serve this past year? Just reflecting on something, one of these things that could be a personal mission or sense of purpose, could be community, people you live near, your work, your faith community. Just taking 3 minutes to reflect on this question and to write about it or to doodle or just trusting whatever comes up first. And if nothing does, just letting that be there too. So 3 minutes. Take another 30 seconds. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back here. And now I just invite you to just take a moment and just reflect on the experience itself. Just notice the state of mind, state of body, the impact of just reflecting for 10 minutes on your personal strengths, activities, relationships, communities, and writing about them. What does that feel like in your body, in your heart, in your mind? Often it creates a sense of joy. It might not, it might just be neutral for you, but just taking this time to pay attention is really, it has powerful impacts on us. Learning to reflect and to take joy, to look back on something, just, these small little actions can have such a powerful impact on them. Even if it's just in saying, right, I made the effort, like I gave it a try. And as we do this at the end of a day, at the end of a year, at the end of a project at work or whatever, and we look back and we think, how, like we reflect on these questions, this idea of like, how does this impact, like why was I doing these things? How did it impact me? It gives us energy, it gives us courage, it gives us motivation to go into the next day, into the next year. And taking joy and connecting to our values is really essential. It has a crucial role in sustaining our motivation, like literally our dopamine levels, our ability to just keep and like these neurotransmitters that give us the ability to keep doing things when it's over a long, long time. So this practice of just reflecting is really just a wonderful one to help us reframe and kind of look at our year or at a situation through a different set of eyes, but also to find energy and to find courage to move forward in our lives and to connect to our sense of purpose. So the other thing I just want to, I'll just ask you to, I'll give you just a minute to think about that. Like, how did that land for you? What did you learn from doing it? What did you discover? And if you'd like, you can even just, jot down some thoughts. Now I'm going to invite you, we're going to come and sort of that idea of just looking back, I'm going to invite you to do one last sort of practice with this connecting our values to the things that we've gone through. 2021 is a really hard year, and it's been hard for all of us, as I mentioned, in different ways. Is there something that you learned that you were going to carry forward? Or if you could tell your future self or a future generation something, let's say that in 100 years again, people are going through a pandemic, just like in 1918, there was a pandemic, and now here in 2021, we're going through a pandemic. Is there like a time capsule of wisdom that you can leave? Either for yourself for next year or for another season of your life when you have to go through something difficult, or for a complete stranger. Like if we had to go through this year, even if there's not something specific, just setting an intention, like dedicating what we've done so that the world will be an easier, better place for ourselves and for other people. That we can take some of the hard-learned wisdom and it can carry forward with us individually in our lives, with the communities and families we belong to, but also with humans at large? Can we take these strengths and activities and relationships and let there be a lasting positive impact in the world? And I'm dedicating what we've gone through to the well-being of all people. Sometimes when we have to go through something hard, deciding, finding that sense of agency that, well, if I had to go through this, I want the world to be a better place, and how can I do that, is a really profound way to take stress, to take trauma, and to help us shift from that place of stress to a place of growth. So now we're going to turn forward looking to 2022, and we're going to just come back to where we began doing that sort of values. I'll invite you to come in to think about your values again. And then I'll invite you to set a specific intention for this next year, or for this next day, for this next week, like something about how you want to be in the world. What it might look like, one small thing to live more deeply as a deeper, like more deeply rooted in your values, for your life to be more full of a fuller expression of the deepest values that you hold. So once again, finding a comfortable position, you can keep your eyes open or closed. Just taking in a deep breath. And exhaling, letting your body soften and relax. And coming back to these simple questions. What is it that I value deeply? You may find that after this practice, something else comes up, or it might be the same thing. Just allowing yourself to ask this question, what is it that I value deeply? And then again, what in the depths of my heart do I wish for myself, for my loved ones, and for the world? What in the depths of my heart do I wish for myself, for my loved ones, for the world? And thinking about 2022, the things you may already know are coming up for you. Perhaps you have a child graduating from school, or perhaps you will be retiring, perhaps you have a trip planned. And thinking about all the things that you don't know about 2022. And not letting yourself necessarily get overwhelmed, but just recognizing there are things that we hope for and plan for, and there are things we'll never know until they show up. And some of the things we plan happen and some don't. But from this place of being connected to your values, see if you can develop a specific set of thoughts, or like a phrase or a word that comes to your mind that can become like a guide, that rudder for you. So much of our stress in life comes from feeling like we don't have control, and in many ways we don't. But setting an intention, when we set an intention, we are making a choice about what kind of world we want to be part of, what kind of person we want to become, what kind of life, day, year we want to have. Not as trying to control it, but as just acknowledging that we do have some choice. And so once again, what is it that I value deeply? What in the depths of my heart do I wish for myself, for my loved ones, for the world? And developing a specific set of thoughts or phrase as your conscious intention for this next season of your life. Could be something as simple, may I be kind to myself and to others. I choose honesty as best I can. May I look for goodness? May I choose courage? Whatever. But if you can, write it down. And I invite you to come back to it, maybe in a week or a month. Put it as a reminder in your phone to pop up and just go, I totally forgot about it. Or wow, I can feel that it's showing up even though I wasn't aware of it. Or whoa, I haven't done that at all. Let me turn around a little bit. Let me reorient myself to what matters most to me. You could also just put it away for the year and come back next December and see, did that show up in your life in any particular way? Thupten Jinpa, the author of Fearless Heart, how the courage to be compassionate can transform your life, our lives. He says, quote, framing our days between intention setting and joyful dedication this way, and I would say framing our year, but doing this even once a week, once a year, can change how we live. It is a purposeful approach of self-awareness, conscious intention, and focused effort by which we take responsibility for our thoughts and actions and take charge of ourselves and our lives. And in a season of our lives where so much is out of our control, nobody would have chosen the last 2 years, finding that place that we do have control, which is who do I want to be in the world? How do I want to show up? Is such an empowering way to live. It brings joy, it brings courage, and it awakens our deepest compassion and capacity to respond to the suffering in our own lives and in the lives of other people with kindness and awareness, and really responding to what is needed most deeply. So I want to end, let me see, I think I have this. Yep, I have it right here. I'm going to end with my part with a little bit of a poem, not the whole thing. It's a poem called Coleman's Bed by the contemporary poet David White. So I'll read it, just part of it. He says, make a nesting now, a place to which the birds can come. Think of prayerful palms holding an egg, and be the one looking out from this place whose warm interior forms into light. Feel the way the cliff at your back gives shelter to your outward view, and then bring in from the horizon all discordant elements that seek a home. Be taught now among the trees and rocks how the discarded is woven into shelter. Learn the way things hidden and unspoken slowly proclaim their voice in the world. Find that far inward symmetry to all outward appearances. Apprentice yourself to yourself. Begin to welcome back all that you sent away. Be a new annunciation. Make yourself a door through which to be hospitable, even to the stranger in you. Live in this place as you were meant to, and then, surprised by your abilities, become the ancestor of it all, the quiet, robust, and blessed saint that your future happiness will always remember. So thank you so much for joining me for this practice of compassion, of reflecting on 2021 and considering how we want to be in 2022. And I'm so grateful to know you, even though I don't know you. And I wish you all the best.